tierra donde el sol de tu bravura le puso cerco a la muerte.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Tu mano gloriosa y fuerte sobre la historia dispara cuando todo Santa Clara se despierta para verte.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Yo, I come from men that stand. I'm in the field and you just sit in the stands. Take that bass out your voice. If you ain't got no gun in your hand, I do what I want. And you don't even do what you can, you do what you told. I got no love for my foes that can mimic my delivery and copy my prose. But what they can't comprehend is how I stick to this code. It's either in you or not. It's not the kicks and the clothes. They ain't cut from the same cloth, can't come from the same loom. Fit in similar shapes or even sit in the same room. Confusing authenticity with part of the costume. I'm teaching gifted children, you can't come in this classroom.
Dare to struggle, dare to win.
Welcome back. And I'm without my mic. I just now realized it. Shit.
We can still hear you pretty clear though.
Oh, good. Peace, everybody. Welcome to Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win, episode 27. What's going on, Cherie?
I said I thought I did the full intro. I was like, oh, excuse me. But I'm good. I'm good. Just been prepping for this show and stuff, looking at places in Atlanta. Had a job interview today. Don't know if I got the job because I don't know. Yeah, I might have blew it, but it's cool. Other people still do him, so it's cool.
You ain't gonna know what your comments feel like out, right? Socialist.
Yo, I did realize because I applied to one job that was like pro people and kind of like it was a nonprofit thing, and I had like radical organizer in the bio, and then I sent that to one of these corporate jobs. I applied to. I was like, oh crap, wrong resume. About to blow my cover. I was like,
Geechee, you missed your clip, man.
Which one?
The
what them boys at, man? I don't forgot it. Damn it. I think I probably took it out of here. Yeah.
Man, that's the good one, man.
Oh, Jared.
We was 1,000 strong. Everybody got government jobs.
Funny. But welcome to Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win on Black Liberation Media, where we give you Black radical politics from a CMV vantage point. I'm your host, Cherie Danielle. We got Geechee, y'all, and Dr. Yusef Bunchy Shakur. We know that y'all are very well politicized on Black Liberation Media, but if you could please share that link with somebody in your family, your friend group that needs to get radicalized ASAP. We would greatly appreciate that. Oh, hey, Carmen, what's up?
Peace, y'all. So listen, man. Yusef, I know there was a light build you want to get into.
Thanks, Carmen.
Tell us.
Man. I mean, what? 13 days into Black August. What people's thoughts are. I don't know if any of you guys are celebrating it. I mean, be politically correct when I say celebrate, participating in any of the fast, honoring those who are still incarcerated. Just the whole principles behind Black August.
Yeah, I'm fasting social media right now. That's like the only thing I thought, it's really worth it. I mean, I can't really do the food fast, y'all. I barely eat on the right times a day on like a regular day. So y'all just be like, and I really don't be up that early. So I'm just like, I can never do no food fast. I'm already off with that. But I did fast social media, and it's been interesting. I'm trying to take more time to read the books that I'm always talking about that I actually haven't read, but just heard people describe them very well. So I was like, I got to see for myself, So I'm like, let me read, The Blood in My Eye. And I had already read most of Assata Shakur's biography, but I never finished it. So I'm finishing that up. I attended one of Amber from the morning show on Friday. She has like a Black August class thing. I went to one of those because she shared it in our chat. And then I've listened in on Black Men Builds thing that they've done for Black August. I think they have another thing they're doing today. So yeah, I've just been trying to educate myself, sharper on political prisoners and like their stories, and just really amp up my studying when it comes to my politics, because I'm really new to, radical organizing and radical thought, even though, I'm like written a play about it and stuff, but I feel like there's still so much more that I have to learn. So I think I'm just trying to take the time to get very clear on meanings, definitions, and politics and what they really mean. Because for a long time, I think it helped listening to people talk about it before jumping into all these books, because I feel like I would jump in the books and be kind of lost, like, what the heck, So now I feel like I'm finally at a mental state where I can understand and comprehend the books as I'm reading them. Mm-hmm. So that's really just what I've been taking the time to do. I've been kind of off these past few days because since I have more time to read last week, I was like, yo, my brain was done. So I had to take a little bit of break, but now I'm back on it. But sorry, don't mean to blab too much. But yeah.
No, that was all good stuff. I was almost had like somebody in the chat, man. Like you can't mention political prisoner without mentioning prisoners of war. Ooh.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I didn't there's nothing that I added to the things that I already do since this
you barely eat already.
Yeah. Nah. I mean, in terms of studying and exercise and stuff, like I already was doing some of it or most of it. But yeah, I haven't done so with the group or whatever. I know there's a couple things that we're doing as a chapter in an organization, but yeah, I haven't locked in with any group of people honoring stuff or doing stuff.
Yeah, for me, I started the first week and a half on fasting. I'm going to LA this weekend, so I'm gonna break it and get back on it on Monday when I come back. I mean, I try to simplify when I talk the Black August to people who are conscious but not necessarily knowing the depth of it. So like it's the Ramadan for New African revolutionaries and that simple version, and people kind of get it. But I think overall, like to your point, what things that we do is the intensity of it. It's like one of my goals is to work out twice a day. I go in the morning and work out as a trainer. I haven't been able to do that yet, but I have been getting up at 5:30. Well, early I've been getting to the gym by 5:30 to work out, which been I was normally getting there by 6:30. So
that's
you see her. Yes. So I'm doing pretty good in that department.
Wow. Yeah, I've been trying to keep up better with my working out too. By working out, I mean riding my bike, because I don't do gyms. But I know eventually I have to get to this whole gym thing, because I've always just kind of accepted I'll be one of the first to go if when the fighting and revolution goes down. But perhaps I will want to put up a fight a little bit for a good strong minute, So I'm like, maybe I'll go and start to bulk up. But yeah, biking has really helped me be more active, more outdoors, because I can be inside a lot since I work remote. So
maybe so you're reading Blood, so maybe George can inspire you. I mean, from a calisthenics standpoint.
I mean, more so reading him makes me realize, oh wow,
yeah,
you don't got it in you, sis. Like you're not built for that. Like it's definitely like. So I'm more so, like I said, when he talks about the vanguard and bringing it in, like I'm bringing it in, but I already know. It'd be like she was a strong soldier. She fought hard, and it would be.
Because he was self-taught with martial arts and things of that nature, doing 1,000 push-ups a day on his knuckles.
I just learned how to do push-ups. Well, really the female push-ups. Because so long I was too weak to do them. My arms weren't strong enough. But now I'm the thickest I've ever been in my life. I'm a whole 130. So I can actually lift myself up now.
I'm a whole 130.
Because I was always like 109, 108. Now I'm thick now. So I can lift myself up. So I'm getting stronger. Just gotta start. Yes, thick. Yes.
Look at
with the triple C.
Look at Geechee.
I'm looking at it just. She gonna say it 6 times. Nobody care about that shit.
But yeah. So I mean, I'll die definitely thick and with a good fight. Hopefully, yeah. Got to go out strong.
No doubt. I mean, it's all that is part of the regimen, and it's just part of finding your balance. Some of us are better than others exercising, while others are better than reading, and find a routine for you, but also is the commitment. I think like revolution starts inwardly before it gets outwardly, and I think if you think of it from this standpoint, like oppression is something that we suffer every day, but then there's different levels. And so when we're reading George and what he experienced, that's the intensity of it. And and I think we also forget being a political prisoner is really about you being persecuted because of your political beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And any of us who have political beliefs could find ourselves in that position, and we never know what we're able to endure until we're in that situation. So if you can begin to prepare yourself for that, yeah, you're halfway there.
Yeah, true. And I just want to say one quick comment. I was getting my hair done by my cousin yesterday, and I had like a moment where I dropped a little political education because we were watching, she'd be watching random Netflix stuff while she's doing my hair. So she was watching some prison show or whatever, and I was watching it. Then I started to get annoyed because, of course, towards the end, they're like, "We're gonna honor the sheriff because he's making things better for this prison." And stuff. I'm like, how the hell they gonna honor the sheriff at the end of all this? You see, that girl almost died in the prison. Had like all these different things happening. And then later on, I started talking to her about, how I'm doing my next show in collaboration with the political prisoner. She's like, "What the fuck is the political prisoner?" And I was like, I was like, yeah, somebody that's going to jail for like their specific political affiliations and views and stuff like that, and specifically targeted like a Black Panther or like somebody in Black Liberation Army or whatever. And she was saying, "Oh," so it's interesting to kind of like introduce people more about like some radical politics just by kind of like explaining what this month even really is,
Yeah. So listen, we got a special show for y'all today, in honor of Black August and in honor of political prisoners or people who was politicized while being captured. Our brother Yusef have a strong story. A lot of y'all probably heard some of it. Some probably didn't, but today we're gonna play part 1 of a documentary. We're going to play the whole thing here, and we'll be in the comments so we can like comment real live time with the audience. But then after 30 minutes, we're going to stop the video and do a talk back, and we're going to finish session 2 next week. But if you're rewatching, you're only going to be able to see the conversation afterwards because we're not going to keep the video up. So only people who are in the chat right now can watch the video. So make sure that you share this this video or this screen with us, so that not with us but with your people, so we can participate in the conversation. So I just need to get Cherie to cue up the video. You on mute, Cherie.
I was saying I didn't know if I was doing it now or like wait until.
Yeah, no, I wanted you to put it up so I can just put it up.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so we'll get started with that, and like I said, we're gonna come off the screen for a little while, and in the chat with y'all, and then we could when we stop it at the 30-minute mark, we'll get back on. So here's the documentary, Yusef documentary, that was this in 2024, I think. Yeah, publishing.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a good one. Get your drinks, tissues and Kleenex. And
Yeah.
Oh, let's get the party started.
All right.
I am Yusef Shakur, the grandson of Minnie and Walter. I am
Sorry about that. I don't know how. Cherie, did you stop sharing your screen or you just cut it off?
I stopped sharing the screen. I can, and then I think I paused it. Yeah, because I thought that was the part.
Yeah, I think it did something funky with the thing just now. I was gonna take it off, but let's see if we can fix it right quick. Hopefully that fixes it. Yep, there we go. Yeah. So really quickly, quick responses, Cherie, before we get into the conversation with Yusuf. Some reflections and thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to say it was nice to watch your transformation. Physically was pretty dope. I was like, look at you. And then you was rich, you had the hang time. I was like, okay. So that was cool. But on a more serious note, yeah, I think it just makes me think so much as somebody who just grew up from, you know, in just very different circumstances. You know, I'm just always amazed to, because I feel like sometimes we hear most in society as we hear about that good one that came from the same background or this, that, and the third, usually by people that didn't even have to go through something like that. You know, there'll be people that might have grown up more similar to me to be like, well, there are some people that didn't end up a certain way or end up in jail or end up, you know, in certain, you know, situations, but it's something that they never even confronted or even seen up close themselves. So I'm just always, I guess, somewhat fascinated to kind of see just how much, like, even just listening to just the ages that you were at, like, you know, being 17 and having seen that much and being 19 and having seen that much. And it's just like, I think of my biggest issues when I'm 17 or 19 is like the school play or some shit, you know? And so it's just like, it's just fascinating to me how a lot of people will speak about a particular background and what people end up doing in a certain circumstance when they've never had to deal with that thing. And even though people have come out of those backgrounds and didn't have to go through a stage, there still is so many other things that go into, just shaping where a person ends up. And even just how you were able to go in that situation and get to kind of get political education and grow into the person that you eventually became, you know, through your dad, but then still, like, I feel like understanding or having that moment of clarity when it came to everything with your mom and what she had to go through, and still kind of remembering that, like, you know, like, even though there may have been harmful things done, she's still a product of this same environment of, you know, I guess, like, self-hatred and like not understanding the bigger picture of things. So that was interesting. And then also the note of capitalism too was interesting, of like, you're seeing it play out, you know, as a dope boy, as of how capitalism works. And so that's very interesting to somewhat, because I've always looked at dope boys as victims of capitalism, and I still do. But then, you know, to kind of, you know, like I said, it's more of like, what do they describe it as? Like, you know, when they talk about like rape victims that don't look scotch clean, it's kind of like the non-perfect victim or whatever. And I do think that you, as a revolutionary, somebody that's conscious in this world, you have to be able to kind of have that mind where you can look at somebody as a victim of the system and still acknowledge some of the harm that they've done because of the system. And I think that's what we kind of get into when we talk about Miss Shirley in the comments and stuff like that. Is like, like, you know, there's a bigger picture to all of this. And I think that's what we try to highlight here on the platform, is that not to glorify a certain decision, but to understand how the leading steps end up becoming that decision. I think that this documentary kind of illustrates what leads up to a person, you know, doing those things. So, yeah.
Yeah. So kind of the same, like what I see, and I've watched it a couple times. And I remember even hearing this story when I first met Yusef. Can't remember when, but when I came up to Detroit for some stuff. But I see like two warriors, mother and his father, despite the circumstances that forced them to navigate life, which I'm kind of going to ask a question first. They both were able to, despite that, play something in their son to create the Yusef you see today. And one of the things about being vulnerable and sharing a story like this is, and I know Cherie just said she came in late, so she kind of missed the context, which the video won't be up, so you would have to, listen to the conversation after today. Part 2 you can watch live next week. But I just think sometimes we fail to understand that most of us, before we even became anything of substance to speak any type of politics, like have a life that we don't always share, and you wouldn't know what the fuck, who the fuck, what the fuck people are getting into, especially just hearing them today. Like seeing the work that was being put in on people by other people and community and whatever to develop who you can see on this camera is crazy for you to think that you would know or understand what people had to go through to get here. And I think it's honorable to be able to share that story and be vulnerable with people. But Yusef, I want you to open up with, as I think most people know, I don't know, a lot of people know Detroit, they know about the Black Bottoms. They're hearing about Zone 8 and the different things. So I'm curious about the temperature, right? And this is going to be a twofold question. One, like, is there a story like yours that you connect to with somebody from the Black Bottoms? Two, in the 80s, we know like shit was popping off in Detroit. In 85, unemployment was 15.5. And so the other question is, I'm curious, like, was your parents or your grandparents in relationship with the auto industry at all, like workers or whatever? But any context about setting the stage for this environment before you even touch the earth, I'm curious.
Well, I think we got to put out in context the migration, black bodies leaving the north. Leaving the south to come to the north, go to the west, escaping white hegemony, white brutality to meet it in a very sophisticated way in the north, Detroit, and things of that nature. So my grandfather, he came. He worked in one of the factories. My uncles at some point. I think it's important to understand. Like, so my story is not unique. It is universal to the Black experience. Those who didn't came a little bit in the intentionality to the way we did this. Obvious. There's the gangster, the thug elements, the street elements. The second part, we got a little bit in the transition, right? We're telling that, but again, if people listening, even like in that part where my name is Joseph, my name is JoJo, like versus me coming in and trying to tell you who I am, going through that transition. I remember when the movie Black Panther, and I'm talking about the fictional movie. Everybody from the Black community, everybody identified with who was the villain in the movie? I can't think his name right now.
Killmonger.
Everybody identified with Killmonger. Everybody was rooting for Killmonger. Why? Because Killmonger reminded them of their brother, of their father, the guys that's on the corner that's being left for dead or whatever. And this is part of this is the transition, but we don't get to the transformation. And we assume every brother goes to prison and every sister possibly that's going to come out and be a Malcolm X, be a Bunchy Carter. George, that is not the case at all. That is not the case. I was very fortunate because of me and my father in prison, he was a serious dude. So in our introduction and building our relationship, I embraced that seriousness. So my early stage of my transformation was through reading, but I was reading religious books. I was reading basic history books, but it was enlightening my mind. When I got transferred back to another prison, I was known as a prisoner who kept a Foot Locker full of books. And there was another prisoner who was known for books, and we kind of had like a book standoff, like who had the better books. And at the time, he had Astonishing Shakur, he had Blood in My Eye, he had Seize the Time, all these more revolutionary books. And so obviously he won out. And I began to read those books, and that took my transformation to another level. Even like Shirley's her early comments, I didn't take offense to it. I mean, there's people, I remember when I coming home, a lady like, "Oh, that's you, JoJo?" She crossed the street because of what she remembered of me and things. But again, the work that I do in my community is part of my redemption, my transformation. But it's also do we create space and opportunity to redeem ourselves in our community? Like, some of us are worthy and deserving of it, but at the same time, we had to earn that. And I think I've been earning mine by putting in the work. It's not something I just show up and say I'm a transformed man. And I conclude on this. I remember some years ago, I was sitting at I was invited to a dinner. It was a white guy hosting the dinner. It was a bunch of black folks. And this is my early part of this transition into the whole nonprofit thing where people are competing with each other. And I remember some older women whispered over to me. We're in downtown Detroit, like, how do we know you really changed? And I'm like, because I ain't outside waiting to rob on you motherfuckers. That's how you know we'll change. And I said it just like that because I was still rough around the edges, as a lot of people say.
Yeah, your guy on there was saying like, yeah, Yusef now he's doing good work, but he's still rough around the edges. But I asked that because I think it's important, right? As again, I don't know what people read because they're on Black Liberation Media. I don't know people's life experience, and I very rarely know what the fuck people doing in their community today or with city. But I do know if you position yourself to be a revolutionary radical or somebody on the left, you would be able to like contextualize moments, right? And even for us on the screen. So when you think about World War II and how it impacted Detroit and how the auto industry, again, there's segregation and whiteness also, but the auto industry pretty much being transformed into producing war materials and people losing jobs. But then at the same time, like there's obvious a war on Black Detroit, and anybody who grew up in that situation is going to experience it. So it's either you're going to be reflected and look like you're in the fucking war zone and actually have to like adjust to the war zone. And so, yeah, I'm just always curious for like grounding around the context of a situation. I remember where I was born in Charleston, but the town that my mother was in, I found out, years, like maybe a couple years ago, like it was a couple hours from flooding and pretty much killing most of the Black people in that area because they didn't stop the Santee Canal. And I'm like, little shit like that to not know that like a whole motherfucking Black community can be flooded out by some type of whatever. Understanding historical context to me makes things a lot logical, and then us not being this, as somebody said in the chat, holier than thou, like, well, but anyway, Cherie, if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, once again, like I said, I can never judge something I never really had to go through. And even if I did have to go through it and came out differently, I still don't think I would, because like I said, you have to understand, even if you are the special 5% or 10% or whatever, that, grow up under those same circumstances, go to your HBCU or get your scholarship or become a basketball player or whatever. You still have to have the understanding that you're just not the majority. And I mean, it's kind of like, and even when it comes to those people, a lot of the times, like, okay, say, there was just this one grandma or auntie in his life that was on him and he became a freaking basketball star or whatever, and was like this, beautiful fairy tale story or whatever. It's still in this society, that story itself would still not be necessarily used for good. He would more than likely end up becoming friends with the other Killer Mike and telling people how they could circulate the dollar and have a black bank and, end up into some stuff that still, may not, be selling drugs to a person, but, still kind of selling them something that is not of their benefit. So it's just kind of like, I kind of feel like regardless in this system, even if, you know, you do become like the one that's able to get through or make it out, even that comes with particular like stimulations that are not healthy for the collective. So I'm just, you know, so I feel like you know, in hindsight, I mean, I much rather somebody have to go through or somebody go through a transformation like that and be able to kind of understand, you know, the messed upness of the dope boy, and then also understanding that, you know, the one guy that became a super rich millionaire or whatever isn't necessarily the ideal thing we're going towards either. And so you're able to kind of be able, through your studies and through your lived experience, be able to kind of see, you know, the messed upness of the system on both ends and have like a clearer view of that. Rather, if you know, like I said, had just become that success story, your lens might have only been that. Well, I made it and I got out. I don't understand how these thugs just keep thugging, you know, and like, what good is that for the collective that's still struggling and still most likely ends up believing that the only way to not, you know, be in a sense of everyday struggle is to, you know, be a dope boy and be able to kind of get a better sense of income as opposed to working at a McDonald's or whatever, like you mentioned in the documentary. So I mean, yeah, so I think that's just something that I really think is interesting overall. And then just kind of like hearing this other side of Detroit, because my mom's from Detroit, and like I said, I would visit growing up, but I mean, like, I think she kind of grew up in North, like the Motown Detroit, but then at the same time, even amongst that, she still tells me, like, you know, people were always dying and always something crazy happening growing up. And I'm just always just, yeah, like what? Because even she'll tell me, like, yeah, you're not even used to hearing or witnessing death like that. Like, even at 33, I just haven't seen that many people go, you know? And like, so I just think it's just interesting to see people's different life experiences. Yeah.
No, I just want to add, like, the purpose of this special that we did in conjunction with Black August. George talks about in Blood in My Eye, the goal is to transform the Black criminal mentality to a revolutionary mentality. And this is like, when you see my life, that's what that is. And being able to kind of show that it's not the one way, but it's a many. I mean, you got Sanyuk, Shakur, numerous other brothers and sisters who also walk that path, but also realizing that not everybody has to go to prison to transform their life either, right? And some of us, but to be Black in America, we all have to find ourselves at that crossroad of transformation, whether it's a criminal mentality or whether it's a bougie mentality that we're trying to transform to deal with these things. Because also, to your point about the dope boys, I mean, why is it only in marginalized, oppressed communities that dope becomes an economic opportunity to win, but it's at the expense of its own people? Like, it is in Black and brown communities that Scarface is hung up like he's Jesus. It's only in our communities that we change our names to Al Capone as if that's normal, right? Because it feeds off of the self-hatred that's within us. And that's part of the deconstructing of that, what the film does as you get further into it, but also from a very human standpoint. Like, there's nothing special about me, the fact that we're oppressed and I'm trying to get the fuck from being oppressed.
You know,
look at our mama's comment. Yeah, because I was just talking, she always talking about like people was getting shot up. But yeah, so I just always think about that in Detroit. Sorry to cut you off, Geechee. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, like, so a couple of points in the film, and I want you to respond to this, Yusef, made me think about like situations that I encounter. And I think it's important, again, to frame things like you just don't know. You don't know how people, as you said, transform, and what it could be something simple as somebody swapping out a situation for you. It could be as simple as somebody who has something close to you and it could take something away from you. Whatever the incentive is to get you to change or adjust is different. So I'm looking at, again, in the story, a young boy who's engaged in B&E at 9, right? And I don't know what cities y'all come from, but that's typical activity, right? If you don't got it, go get it. You had Doc Strange, right? Everybody has this Doc Strange or some people like that. I'm also curious what you
Wait, what's the word you said?
what's that?
You said you got what is the word? I just didn't know what you were saying.
You talking about somebody?
Doc Strange is somebody's in
a character. You talking about a character?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So and then so you have these people, right? And then you have there's a point where you said like you didn't see lawyers, judges, or other occupations. And so one of the things is I'm curious if you saw the Yusefs today around, like if you saw some people who were trying to do a particular thing, but maybe they wasn't living that lifestyle. And then not so funny, but not ironic either. But the story about, you know, again, capitalism and drug dealing. Like I have a very similar personal story to, again, like you trying to make as much money as possible, and it's not like getting weight is very easy. So when people start, you know, if that was in the 80s, in the late 90s and 2000s, like trying to sell and manipulate soap, you know, yeah, that's just interesting that thing is kind of typical throughout generations of people moving in a way where they're trying to get it how they can. But yeah, I'm just curious if you could kind of say, like, maybe what's your relationship with Doc Strange now? I know he was in the film. And then, yes, do you remember having interactions with maybe politicized people outside before going in and other things?
No, no direct people that was politicized. I mean, think in Detroit, like most urban cities, was it changed overnight when crack cocaine. You know, try to give a glimpse through the film. Like heroin, like the black community has always been under siege through drugs and crime, but heroin put us to sleep, and crack cocaine was the zombies and shit, right? It was a quick way to get money. I'm talking about fast money. It was turning you know, young people into millionaires. Like the movie New Jack City, most people don't know is actually based upon a drug organization in Detroit called the Chamber Brothers. That was from Mississippi, somewhere from the South. And I remember like when 50 Cent, when his first album Get Rich or Die Trying, this mentality was in Detroit in the mid 80s, because the Chamber Brothers, they did a video where they had a bunch of singles that they put in trash bags, and they videoed themselves just passing them out. And when they got busted, the news showed that clipping on the news. And you know, for young boys growing up in Detroit or in other urban cities where your parents can't, or your mother, and I mean, again, also we're not taking consideration. This is the birth of black single mothers raising kids in this environment that's competing against this. Like this is the emergence of Michael Jordans, the Jordans. These are now silk shirts, skates, snakeskin belt. Like all this stuff is competing from a materialism standpoint. And then going back to your earlier point, Geechee, this is the birth of de-industrialization. And so, you know, gang banging to some degree, but more importantly, drug gangs become, as I said in the film, they become the new economic opportunity. They become the new Burger Kings and McDonald's. Like that's why, like Young Boys Incorporated, like they broke the mold on where they went out and recruited young guys, young kids, because they knew, or they learned a loophole. A young kid they would get arrested, but they'll let go. And that's how like they was able to emerge in what they become. But it's just through this deeper thing that you get caught up in, and if, like your big homeboys, they leaving. So my relationship to like Doc Strange, he was my big homeboy on my block that I grew up on. So he was, like I said in the film, he was my Spider-Man. He was my Superman. Like I looked up to him, and so I modeled myself after him and others to some degree. Like the gang banging component, he was the blueprint for that. So I mean, Doc Strange has been in prison. He's out now. He's doing community work, engaging in community and things. So it's just them really getting back to this conversation, but transformation is so important. Like, we can do charity work, but are we doing revolutionary work? And there's a thin line between that.
Yeah, and I think that's, really what it comes down to, especially when I talk about the people that are like the quote unquote good ones, people that make it out. It's like maybe they're able to do a lot of charity, but they're not necessarily doing revolutionary work to kind of hit the problem more at the core of like where it's at, and kind of confront it, to get people to understand that internal institutionalized, self-hate kind of, that is more internal than as opposed to just like, oh, I'm gonna come back every Thanksgiving and give out some turkeys or this, that, and the third. So that's always like interesting too. And then I was trying to think, I had one other comment, but I think I might have forgot what I was thinking. I'm sorry, but yeah, I do think just overall, I mean, it's not that everybody necessarily has to go through something like that, but I guess it's just understanding that a lot of people have to go through something to kind of get them to a point where they kind of are able to kind of wake up and see and get that kind of radical context to understand things at a bigger picture. And it's just one of those things where I do wonder, like, how Geechee was saying, like, you said you didn't see the lawyers of that, but did you see like did you know of community organizers, or was there people that were like trying to? Was there anybody around kind of being like, oh, you should do this? Or was it just more like, yeah, but they're not cool, or nobody wants to be like them? People want to be like the other guy that you said was like your Superman. Is it? I was just kind of curious about that.
I mean, again, it was there, right? So, I mean, like this past August 3rd, we held our 20th backpack year, right? And Mrs. Crockett is an elder in the neighborhood. They used to own a business. And when I came home, it was one of the first places I went to. And when her husband was still alive, Mr. Crockett, and they were like, hold up, JoJo, I got to show you something. And he went and got a big ass stick. And he's like, man, I took this stick from you when you was a kid. I mean, I couldn't wait to show it to you, right? And I joked Mrs. Crockett, like, you still got that stick? She's like, yeah, JoJo, I still got that stick. And they wasn't necessarily revolutionary in the revolutionary content, but they was revolutionary in community engagement. But their impact began to evaporate because, again, the community, flipped overnight. I knew them. I had respect for them. I had love for them. I would never violate them. But some of my homeboys who didn't necessarily have the same thing I had violated them. Or again, there was a family in the neighborhood. I knew her. She was one of my third grade teachers. As we got older, one of the homeboys from another part of the neighborhood carjacked her. I was pissed at the motherfucker, even as a gang member, because like, how the hell you gonna carjack Miss Williams? Like, she in the neighborhood. Like, but this is the contradiction, but it's showing the shift, and also the thing we don't get into, like, everybody growing up in poverty, but all poverty is not equal. There's some who are poor, and then there's some of us who are poor. Yeah. And those who are poor, and those kids suffer the most. Like, you got to get out in the dirt and eat and clean and take care of yourself, and that right there changes your process of being a monster is more quicker than my process was. Like, my mother whooping my ass kind of slowed me down a little bit. My mother making me a ward of the state at the age of 15 slowed me down. I mean, I was still on the track, but my track had not hit like the others. And so fast forward to Geechee point of, and to your further question now is, what does that representation look like? That's what Yusef is doing now. The representation with the Mama Core Community House, like right on the block that I grew up in the mix of gentrification, all those things, where my little homeboys, because like I'm serving my neighborhood the way I wish I saw somebody as a little boy, giving them an example, but it's not so this goes back to organization, why we do what we do and what we're talking about. So our organization has to come to the forefront, because this cannot be about an individual, and this is about an individual, because capitalism is not just a system, it's a culture. Yeah. A culture of promoting individualism. And what we do best is take that individualism and we package it around an individual story.
Yeah, I got you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful. And if you're watching the episode 27. We're watching and having a talk back on the documentary that Yusef has. This is part 1. We'll be finishing part 2 next week. And if you are watching, rewatching on YouTube or any other platform, the video, you won't be able to see the video. You have to watch it live, but you can definitely see and finish the discussion and engage as you will. So there's a couple things, right? When I think about when you said like your mom's making you a ward of the state, it made me think of like what Ori writes about programification and this idea of like this space is a rehabilitation space, and it's very similar to a quote I had about social workers on social that I posted earlier about how social workers do everything except advocate for socialism, organize for socialism, but they are basically trying to correct your behavior back into the social status that perpetuates this system. So again, also Ori talks about the reaction. The programification reaction was from the 1971 riots, right, where they start to again build up these programs. So I'm curious, one, how you grapple with or felt when your mom like said, "This is all I know to turn you into," and then also now where you're at, right? Because there's another brother out there who's not like you, who's claiming that the prison rehabilitate him. His name is Charleston White. And it's like y'all got the opposite stories. But I'm just curious, how do you grapple with, argue against that? See, this nigga he went on a vacation a little while, but he came back this way. So it does work. So how do you make sure you control the narrative that, nah, my nigga, my pops and other things did that, not this motherfucking institution?
Well, first I'm gonna ask you. When I was talking, and I forgot. So there was King Solomon Church, literally around the corner from my house, where actually Malcolm X had given the message to the grassroots speech. And as a child, there was a portion of the church that operated as a recreation center. There was a boxing ring, and there was a skating ring down in there. It was a social service type of programs. And at some point, and this wasn't funded by anybody. I think this was just the church and the pastor engaging the community. And when those doors closed, it further pushed us to the streets. And at that time, we was more like Little Rascals, doing Little Rascals type stuff. But then some years later, they would open up the another official recreation center, maybe about a half a mile from my house. But that was in another neighborhood. And I don't know how other people, when you begin to associate neighborhoods by gangs or cliques, and I ain't going over that neighborhood shit. I might get my ass kicked, whatever. And so that was like the beginning to trying to find your identity throughout the streets. So fast forward going to prison. I mean, again, now that I understand, the prisons are nothing but an arm wing of the state. I repeat, the prisons are nothing but an arm wing of the state. The criminalization of Black people, Black men, Black boys, Black women, and Black girls is just another form of our oppression. I've stated it loudly, and I stated in front of whoever. Prison did not rehabilitate me. If it was left up to prison, I'd still be a thug. I'd still be a gang member. So I can never give them that credit, because again, if you go to prison, you understand, like when I went there in the 90s, they took all the school. Only thing you can get was a GED. They took all the stuff out, right? So, but I get it. Like in our own lived experience, it offers the opportunity to produce a type of analysis around our oppression. But we have to be willing to confront our own selves to do the healing and do the work. And the books that we read, it's a pathway to unlocking and rediscovering ourselves, because that's what makes biographies and autobiographies so real. Because in reality, we see ourselves in those stories, and those stories helps us shape the larger Black experience towards our removing the oppression towards liberation. And a lot of guys in prison wasn't reading that, or if they was, they were just faking. I mean, let's dig a little deeper. In Michigan, the political atmosphere was set by mostly religious groups. So there was the Moors, Scientific American, the Nation of Islam, Sunni Muslims, and then there was a group called the Melanic Islamic Palace of the Rising Sun. It got started in prison. That's the group I joined because my father was a member, and was very. The irony of the Melanics was they had to add the Islamic to be able to exist, where they couldn't be targeted as a gang, and their prophet, we named Nat Turner as our prophet. So here was a Islamic group that had a Christian pastor, Christian prophet, which was just crazy. But not everybody was reading, not everybody was studying, and so when I became a Melanic, I was pushing, and I was like, man, like, okay, you read the Bible, now you need to read Wretched Earth. No, you read the New Testament. Now you need to read Blood in My Eye. Because I knew with Blood in My Eye, I knew with Wretched Earth, it was going to do more for you than anything what the Bible could ever do for you in terms of our social material. Not to say it didn't matter, but that's what, like when I read the Black Panther Party, I related to George. I related to Bunchy. Again, zeroing on Bunchy and Carter. Here I realized I lived his life all over again, but also in living his life all over again as from a gang member to go to prison, he also offered me an example what it looks like to get out of prison and to get back and engage in our community. But the problem is there's no Black Panther Party. There's no student non-violent coordinated committee for these individuals to get into. So we have to create them, or because folks are the atmosphere is not the same to build the sustainability of organization to sustain the community work. Because if the individual is above the organization, then we have failed.
Sorry. Yeah, I guess for me, another thing that I think I tend to notice here, and this may be me just being really in my radical bag, but just even thinking more about the whole idea of drugs, and saying we won't really thank the prison system itself for the overall transformation. Sometimes I wonder too, listening to different, I guess, philosophies around drug use and the criminalization of drugs. I'm often thinking too, is it, I understand in this particular system and the way, drugs affect the community, this, that, and third. Yeah, it has a negative impact. But then I guess I've been hearing, I forget his name too, but there's this one academic that does this study around the criminalization of drugs and kind of ties it into the way certain drugs are more criminalized, and then then that equals a criminalization of the people that actually do drugs or sell those specific drugs, and how the whole thing between crack and coke being essentially a similar thing, but because white people have coke and stuff, it's less criminalized as opposed to crack with Black people and stuff like that. And so I'm just always thinking, so much so is it really the drugs itself that's the inherently evil thing, or just the way drugs have to operate in this particular system, and the way we have to sell it in a capitalist system and deal with it? I don't know. I'm just always thinking about that, because I've heard somebody kind of break down even how some of the drugs that people think are wild, if they weren't criminalized or people were given the proper knowledge on them, it would be more like cigarettes and alcohol and everything else that is actually legal. But we would, there would be a bad way of being an alcoholic and, doing too much, as opposed to oh, I do it recreationally or whatever, even with something like crack or whatever. I'm always thinking about that sort of criminalization of drugs and how that happens in a capitalist system. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense. I think we just got to tie it to also we live in a racialized system.
Yeah.
Where again, white hegemony and this racial capitalism, that the heart of that criminalization is anti-Blackness. So to your overall point, a drug should be a drug. So then let's flip it, right? Fentanyl and the other drugs that's really have had a great impact on white communities have had a different narrative and then what crack cocaine had on black communities.
Yeah.
And why is that? It's race. It's how those who can create the narrative not only just control it, but also synthesize with white young people who are using drugs versus when we drug drugs or sold drugs, we was looked as monsters.
Yeah.
What do you do with a monster? You throw them away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I'm gonna say, but also part of that orientation, we buy into that orientation.
Exactly. That's another element where that's another level of the self-hatred that makes you kind of hate and look down on dope boys for what they had to do. But like, you know, a white kid that's experimenting, probably passing around different drugs and doing stuff with their friends, they're not looked at as like, you know, doing harm to their community or inherently evil. It's just the black man or the black girl that's trying to survive in a very, you know, horrible system that is demonized.
Right.
So there was a point where the young brother said like zone 8 is all he know. And me and a good brother was just having a conversation the other day about people that we know who make it, or as you said, this is the first time I felt like I was valued and appreciated, and you know what I mean? Like, and so people who make it to a human experience in the space that they're in, they're recognized, they're known, they have a family or whatever. Like, it's really hard to detach them from that. So this could be religion, this can be career, you know. And when me and my people was talking about this thing, like I got two cousins who made it to the NFL, and then, you know, one of them stayed longer than the other one. But after they gone, like, it's like I can't see, they can't see, the community can't see them doing nothing else with their life. And so it's like they're like a former version of themselves for the rest of their lives. So I got one question here, and then I'm gonna ask another question after you answer this. But like, what kind of thoughts come to your mind when you think about this? Like, this is the context of all I know. You were probably there, but you had some seeds in you. I think it was obvious, your mom and other people. But then when you have to meet a young person now who actually have that mentality, like this is all they know, like, kind of walk us through or share some thoughts that you have, and then maybe even approach that you might, you know, engage those brothers and sisters.
I think that's a show in itself around all that I know. And I think all that we know is really, it's about our hood. All we know is our hood. But for me, my campaign has always been about the hood is nothing but a third world reality that is full of. So all you know is your oppression and how you internalize your oppression. And then I could take you to New York. I could take you to South Carolina. You're probably going to see the hood in South Carolina. You're going to see the hood in New York. So you're not necessarily seeing anything differently. Only time you begin to see something differently when you begin to infuse new thinking, new thoughts, new ideas. And so even though I was in prison, I still had a hood mentality. I still looked at the world through the hood. So that was still all I knew. And it wasn't until I began to read that it began to deconstruct those thinking, that zone 8 mentality, to now allow me to begin to think other things. So now when I go to New York, LA, and etc., I see beyond the hood because I understand the hood is nothing but a hot place of oppression. So there's nothing to take pride in my oppression. Only thing I take pride in is liberating myself from oppression. But that starts with vulnerability. Fred Hampton Jr. once said, growing up with hand-me-downs is one of the most shameful things ever. The fact that you got to wear your big brother's hand-me-down pants, and that's what oppression does. It locks us in feeling less than who we are, and that's why we want that's why you see all the rappers with all the jewelry, and because we're living a false life, and we think that is the road to freedom. Because again, us three know that is a result of capitalism. We think money is going to free us. But we know at the end of the day, money, you can have all the money in the world, you're still a nigga. to white people, right? They still gonna box you in. You know, this is the argument that Jared makes to some degree. Like you don't own anything in the grand scheme of stuff. You may have enough money to buy something, but you can't really make power moves. And that's where again, you know, we have not galvanized to understand that our mind, our spirits, our self-worth, our history, all that is the greatest wealth.
Right.
But we haven't seen in our lifetime that materialize anything because they've taken those examples and they watered them down. They have tainted like Malcolm X and things of that nature, and the Black Panther Party and the others. If we do, we only looking at it through one lens, not the totality. And that's where again the emphasis of transformation is so important.
So this is about my third time watching it in a half. But as I was telling you earlier, like every time I watch it, there's something else I like hyper focus on. And this time I was kind of hyper focused on your father. And it just made me think about this question. Like, so you into this, and this is a phenomenal story in terms of like, and I can see why, you know, when people watch the rest, you can see why many people started to either catch on to it, and maybe even we could talk about it in the future. You might have got some offers because notable people were getting aware of your story. But my question is, like, when you was captured, what or who encouraged you to write that letter to your father? Like what was going through your mind? Who was saying it? What was the impetus of doing that?
It was me. So I think it was my. I think we all have our moments. Those who have become conscious of trying to break free or ask the right question. And so for me, it was that moment I realized, like my mother had told me all my life, like your friends ain't your friends. They don't give a fuck about you. And I was in solitary confinement for like my fourth or fifth time, and I'm looking inside myself, but I was honest enough with myself. I don't have the answers, and it pushed me like, hey, let me write this guy who's technically at that time nothing but a sperm donor, and I realized I have nothing to lose. And it was very fortunate, but it also shows, because what get missed in that part that you're talking about, it never dawned on me when I sit down and write him this letter that he probably gonna feel hurt, ashamed, and some other things, because when it slid up on his door and he realized, like, damn, my son followed me to prison. Like that just show you how ignorant I was. And I was very fortunate when he wrote me back that, because if he'd have wrote me back one of them I told you so letters, I'd have tore that motherfucker up and put it in the toilet and flush it down the toilet. But the fact that he wrote me back in a you know, and it was different tones, you know, being a friend, being a brother, being a father, and all those things like spoke to me, because at the end of the day, mind you, too, I was functionally illiterate. You know, when that letter comes, but what I was able to gather was the love, the protection, the care, like those things was jumping off the letter. And they was like, because at the end of the day, you know, most of anybody who was honest been in prison at that time at my age, even though I'm thinking I'm a gangster or a thug or a prisoner, a man now, I'm a little boy. A little boy in the truest form. And so that letter hugged me. That letter was the love that I needed right there.
Like one of the comments that I guess was just interesting when we were talking about in the comments, we were talking about how you were able to kind of get your, I guess, rival person like in the doc, and then like kind of my only knowledge of this stuff is like through the movies and the shows that talk about this life, and the way they make it seem like it's just never any way out. Like even if you go through prison system, become radicalized, as soon as you get back, you have all these people that are like after you and trying to, so you have to get, I guess maybe the second half of the film will maybe get more into how, everything was once you actually got out. But I guess I'm just curious of like the actual struggle from like having a different mindset and being a different person internally than what people knew you as, and then people still engaging with you or assuming you're going to engage with them or engage with the world in the same way, you know, because I know what it's like for me, just, you know, being me, and I'm like different mentally, and how that kind of, you know, is awkward sometimes. People expecting certain things of me, you know, because they're used to who I was for years and years. So I'm just curious, you know, like, of the struggle around that.
I think the struggle is the struggle we see in general. Are we consistent? Are we really who we are, what we say we're going to be? And in particular, when we think about prison, again, who doesn't have a family member who's been to prison? and in that process that went to prison, stopped eating pork, changed their name, you know, read a little books and get out and do the opposite, right? That is the reputation that's saying strongly and loudly than Malcolm X. Because for every Malcolm X, there's 1,000 of us who went the other way. For every George Jackson, there's 1,000 of us that went back. For every Bunchy Carter, there's 1,000 that's got back in the gang life. So that narrative there is always going to be a haunting narrative that's undermining you to some degree. That your consistency, your determination, your grit has to, and it's not for them, it's for yourself. That you have to, I mean, even like, you know, looking at Shakur, prior to his passing, his inconsistency, his challenges that he had to go through, keep going back, going in and coming home and things. And that's what was able to win people over. Like, you know, most people seeing the film, but for the film, I wrote a book. I wrote 2 books. I remember like some of the older guys and a few other guys like, man, he's snitching. And like, I went to prison for a crime I didn't do. How am I snitching? But that's part of the nature of the beast. You know, now you become a reflection of what you can be, and that's scary. Like, no, I don't want to do that, man. I'd rather just stay and do the dumb stuff. So it's, but also the ability to where, you know, being authentic. And so there's a point where, you know, folks when I was starting getting on TV and things that nature doing interviews, like they saw themselves in me. They saw a true advocate for them, and where I began to win over their respect. But it was still a struggle. And I mean, I got a homeboy, you know, in my neighborhood, young, he like 5 years younger than me. I mean, on some days we about to go to war because of some of the shit he does. And other days, you know, there's respect and stuff. But also in a fool, there's wisdom. So like I share this. A couple months ago, a guy broke in the community house. It was like 2 a.m. So I brought my dogs down there to go see what the fuck going on. I ended up finding out who the guy was. And long story short, we got into it, and I had to do what I had to do. And so this guy, he wanted to teach me a lesson. And the lesson was, man, you too valuable to our community to be out 2 a.m. fucking somebody up. Even though you had a right reason. And the lesson was like, man, he had my man act like he was dead. He wasn't dead. But again, like, even though my man a fool, he act like a fool sometimes, I respect the lesson. Because again, it's so easy to flip and go back to, even though I wasn't in the streets, I got insurance on the, and I'm saying this out of being honest and being real and being authentic, because like we think it's all gravy. And it's not all great. These are the challenges with this, and this is the lure that sometimes we get caught up in the emotion of things. And onions are the dynamic. I'm gonna say the dynamic versus the emotion. And it was. I mean, I took the lesson, because again, if I can teach, I can be taught.
Yeah, listen, man. We just finished part 1 of a 2-part series of watching Redemption Road, Yusef documentary talking about his story. Just had to talk back. If you're rewatching it, sorry, you cannot go back and watch the video unless you're doing it right now, because the video won't be up. But the second half will be up, or we will do it live next week. So make sure you lock in, invite some folks, same place, same time next week. But before we wrap for today, any overall thoughts or reflections Yusef, obviously, you've seen the documentary, you lived the documentary, but you also seen how we engage today in the conversation and in the chat, and then the same thing for you, Cherie, in terms of watching it and engaging in the chat. Any reflections on this conversation, part one, before we wrap?
I think for me, I think the chat is very authentic. The variety of comments, I think this is what we want. This is what we should be getting at with our community. I think there's a level of transformation that we don't get through. And I think the film offers that, but also offers, like, all Black life is not equal. We're not a monolith, right? So Cherie said, like, I grew up totally different, and that matters, right? And so how do we where's our common space to bring the different Black experiences to have those conversations? And I think the film offered that, and is offered to the point where some people may not get it from our perspective. But this is what struggle is. Geechee, what you talking about? We got to struggle with each other. This is political education 101.
Yeah, I think to connect to that, yeah, I think it's even though we all grow up like kind of differently, or there's like a monopoly of, I guess, different type of ways that, like, we backgrounds we can all come from, because it's not a monolith. It's understanding that we all have like kind of the same indoctrination, in a sense, where it's like, even though I didn't grow up like that, I still kind of had the same mental understanding of people like that, or a certain thing of people like that, where it's like, he talks about hating his own community and not seeing them as people and this, that, and the third, because he's just trying to survive and come up. And yeah, that wasn't my experience, but I still was, because I wasn't in that group, I was still looking over, or hearing about that group, or seeing stuff on TV, or seeing stuff on the news, and being like, ugh, like, what's wrong with them? Why can't they just figure out how to, like, not kill each other? Or why are they harming, like, why are they harming their own? There was still kind of like a looking down upon when you don't take the time to actually humanize people and think about their overall circumstances. So it's like, it still is kind of like the same way, he kind of had to go through, obviously his process with his father, and kind of waking up and seeing the levels of it. I still had to eventually through life be like, well, wait, it's not freaking people's fault. Like, people aren't, born a particular way. Like, their environment makes them a certain way, and the America breeds a particular type of environment. So I feel like, sorry, I just was looking at this comment of what Jared was saying. But I still kind of feel like, yeah, there was always, it's the same indoctrination. So I think it's still being on that journey, watching this documentary was still just like, oh, I'm looking at it like, oh, I remember when I used to really think like, oh, dope boys is really the problem. If we get rid of dope boys, then, maybe we'd all be better off or whatever, not actually understanding the circumstance that creates what we, what a dope boy is, or what a gang member is, or whatever, And then also the weird part is like, why was I always trying to date me like a thug back in the day, or what? I was always trying to like get in when I was like a teenager, always trying. And it's just like, you have all this judge at the same time. You was like, ooh, this is interesting. So it's just always like, so yeah, I'm just being ignorant now. But yeah, but it's still overall, I think, yeah, it still is all, we're all under the same imperial core and thinking that allows us to come to certain definitions and certain, I guess, principles that align with the empire before we kind of know more. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the most powerful statements that I pulled from today. It's not even in the documentary. It's what Yusef respond, that if his dad would have responded like this and not like this, it would have been a different story. And I think to kind of like see that, right? That shit just made me reflect on so many times where like something could have gone a different way and it didn't go that way. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's a whole life of things that's happening right now. And because I'm telling you, like there's a I'm not gonna share that. But I think what I'm trying to say is there's just like it's an interesting thing whenever you allow yourself now, because even then I think people can have minds of, dibbling and dabbling in different things. But if you can understand the mind of like trying to survive or trying to move in a situation, then you can kind of like, as Yusef always say, overstand the whole situation. And it takes a while for different people to overstand the situation. But how can they ever overstand the situation if there aren't people out there who has some level of, as Emil Cabral says, it, the pedagogy of patience. Like, how the fuck would they ever even get to that place? So I think sometimes even being on this side, like the critiques could come down hard, and I understand it, because sometimes, as Yusuf say, like whether intellectually or physically, sometimes you have to put your hands on people, unfortunately, because you get to a point where you cannot, I guess, endure what you're feeling at the moment, and then you react. So I think sometimes that happens, but ultimately, and in the second half, we're going to see a major moment of pedagogies of patience and understanding that Yusuf displayed. Because again, like I mean, even in my adult age, older age, like things happen, and I'd be like slight decisions away from doing something that I'm like, the consequences is heavy, right? And so whenever you're able to look at a situation, think through all the consequences and make a decision, like nobody has any clue that you're actually grappling with any of those things, because people are at this point, not only on YouTube but in general, are just consuming you and having surface interactions with you to where they will never know some of those things. So I think this this first part was hella powerful, and I'm looking forward to the next session, and then for more folks into this broader conversation. And I already told you I want to bring you down here to talk to this one group, but I feel like if you mix a little black on black violence with Amos, Ori's book, your documentary, and the things that you write about, I feel like there'd be a hell of a course to go through. So let's see how we can make that happen. What y'all got going on before the week ends this weekend?
Me, real quick, I'll be in LA, attending the Black August Film Festival. My film will be actually featured there, so I'm excited about that.
You got Cherie.
Yeah, I'll just be finishing my Black August reading, and I don't really have anything coming up. Yeah, just preparing for this show, still trying to lock in a place. Me and Geechee saw a place yesterday. So we're just trying to get some price quotes so we can get y'all a ticket breakdown, so everybody's in the Atlanta area can come out, because like I said, we will have another piece featuring an actual political prisoner as well, a former political prisoner. But yeah, so I'm excited, so just making plans for that.
Yeah, I boy, we're gonna spend some time on that, Yusuf. Neil says, listen, I didn't live the same life of Dr. Yusuf, but that father thing is something a lot of us have to deal with.
True story. We'll get into it next week, ain't we?
Yeah, it's gonna get busy next week. But yeah, man, listen, appreciate y'all. Yusuf, thanks for offering up a dope ass documentary that should be not consumed but studied. Should be a part of people's PE. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, David, I said this in the beginning. I guess you came in later, but I'm finishing reading the autobiography of Assad Shakur and Blood in My Eye right now are like my main two for Black August. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys, man, for doing this special today. So appreciate you guys.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah. Listen, I ain't gonna say it.
Don't say it, man.
Peace, y'all. Peace.
Con soles de primavera. bandera para plantar la bandera con la luz de tu sonrisa.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Tu amor revolucionario te conduce a nueva empresa donde esperan la firmeza